Hey folks, welcome to NC State Dendrology. Greetings from the very back of the Schenck Arboretum. You can hear I-40 in the background and it's just about rush hour. So I'm here with Quercus Michoei. This is swamp chestnut oak in the Fagaceae family, right? The beech family. So we've learned several white oaks, and this is another oak in the white oak group. And you might know that immediately just by looking at the bark. So the bark looks very, very similar to Quercus alba. I'm going to pan this up the tree. You can see just a little bit of fall color starting, but what I want you to look at is the bark. So not quite as peely and flaky or platy as Quercus alba, but very distinctively white oak. It's got that light gray color. As you get up into the canopy, right, that bark starts forming vertical plates. So that's one way to know this as Quercus Michoei. Michoei, this tree was named after Francois-Andre Michaux, who wrote the North American Silva and described a lot of the trees. So Quercus Michoei, the leaf shape is very much like, right, so this is swamp chestnut oak. It is very similar to Quercus montana, right, which is regular chestnut oak, or sometimes called rock chestnut oak. So where I'm standing, I'm in the lowland of the Arboretum. This was the best place to plant this tree, and it's actually thriving in this environment. We would not look for Quercus montana here. We would look for it in a dry, rocky, ridgy kind of environment. Now, of course, we are in an Arboretum, so it's planted not very far from where I'm standing. So you can come out here yourself and compare the two. Just like chestnut oak, Quercus Michoei has got I would say not lobed leaves, but sometimes people will call these lobes and just say it's very shallowly lobed. Instead, I would say these are unlobed leaves and that they are crenate, right? Here's a shade leaf, right, which is quite a lot bigger, so leaf shape and size can vary. So one thing about the leaf shape that's important to know is that this one is obovate, right? So swamp chestnut oak, more leaves are obovate than elliptical. Whereas Quercus montana, they're more elliptical leaves, right? So elliptical leaves are broadest at the center of the leaf. Obovate means that they're broadest towards the tip. So these leaves are mostly obovate. They can be very extremely obovate, but you can all see this crenate margin. Another really great way to tell this apart from Quercus montana is if you look at the underside of the leaf. So maybe you can't see the individual hairs, but you can see this is much lighter in color. And in fact, it's very fuzzy. So that's a character, a really important character for swamp chestnut oak, Quercus Michoei. So obovate leaf shape, fuzzy on the underside, smooth on top, and dark. Next, I'm going to talk about, before I go, I just have to share a little bit of the pretty fall color that these leaves get. So kind of a deep red fall color. So this is a sunleaf, a little bit smaller. Last thing I want to talk about are the acorns. So these have huge acorns. Because they're in the white oak group, this is a very important wildlife species. These acorns are a little bit underdeveloped, but you can see that they are definitely got that cobbled cap that's typical of Quercus, of oaks in the white oak group. And these are a little bit small. This is the acorn cap that I have from a mature nut. You can see it is very large, and it would cover as much as half of the nut. The other thing to note is that it has pretty distinct cobbles, like even overlapping scales a little bit, so it's a little bit intermediate between a red oak and a white oak. And this is an important character to look at when you're comparing it to Quercus montana. So Quercus montana has a shallow, very thin-edged acorn cap, and it does have cobbles on it, but they're very shallow. It's a much smoother acorn cap that tends to flare out. Quercus Michoei, the cap tends to hug the acorn, right? So the edge is quite a lot thicker than it is for Quercus montana, right? So here it is. Like I said, this is not a fully developed acorn, but you can see that cap is covering half the nut and really hugging and clasping onto that acorn. So that's a really important character too. The last thing I want to comment on is this species is also compared and confused with Quercus Bicolor. Remember, Quercus Bicolor is swamp white oak, right? So it's a white oak that you would expect to see in this similar kind of habitat. So how do you tell it apart? They have very similar bark. The leaves are somewhat different, right? So Quercus Bicolor also has crenate leaves. You can go look at the one on campus, but they tend to have lobes. Not quite as deep or as many as Quercus alba, but they are distinct lobes. So for Quercus Bicolor, you would have your obovate leaf with a few little lobes that are in it. They are bicolor, they're fuzzy on the back side of the leaf, right? So that's not the character. You have to look at the leaf shape. And then remember, Quercus Bicolor has a different type of acorn. Similar in shape to these, but the acorn cap is really kind of fuzzy. The last character I can show you that you can tell Quercus Bicolor apart from Quercus Michoei is the twigs. If you recall, Quercus Bicolor has twigs that, not only is the bark platy, but the twigs themselves have very peely bark. If you look at this one, right, this is Quercus Michoei. You can see that these twigs are glabrous. They are completely smooth and they don't have any peeling at all. So that's your last character to double check, right? You can see the leaves are pretty much unlobed. They are fuzzy on the backside. We are in a bottomland hardwood forest. These acorn caps are very distinctive and unique for Quercus Michoei, and then you can be sure that you've got the right ID. Thanks for joining me. This is NC State Dendrology.